It's recording, right? Um, Hi, I'm Faisal. I'm an entrepreneur and head of AI. And what are we calling this?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sanjay. Today we have our special guest, Faisal, who's an entrepreneur, head of AI, and also Google developer expert. Hey, Faisal, welcome on. Welcome to. But thanks for joining us. And how are you doing today? I'm doing good. Thank you for inviting. Yeah, thank you. And it's funny enough that the conversation today we're going to talk about is self-evolving AI. And I did see your LinkedIn post where you were talking about how you asked AI to do your coding work, but went to went to have coffee. And I was just curious on how much of your day-to-day task has AI taken up, like specifically in coding.
A lot cough and matchup. Oh, but no, it is true. I do use a lot of AI generated development, specifically Claude Code. I do like Claude Code a lot. I think Claude Code and now the most recent Gemini CLI, I think those are kind of like the future where things are going versus IDEs with extensions. While Claude Code and Gemini still have like the cursor style model, my bets would be that the cursor style model of development phases out in the next 5 years, 10 years, whereas the Gemini CLI and the cursor Claude Code style model becomes more popular.
Okay.
Because you're not interacting with the code anymore, you're becoming more of a software architect, and where you're orchestrating multiple terminals at some point. Say, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, and then it's a joke when I go make coffee, but yeah, technically sometimes Claude Code does take 3-4 minutes.
Yeah.
I could see like 300 seconds, 400 seconds. I'm like, great, I'll just go make coffee, come dot. And then most of the time I'm sitting there, actually, most of the time I am spent correcting what Claude Code's done by telling Claude Code to fix it, or reviewing the pull request, or reviewing actually the GitHub CLI, the UI. I review that code and I say, no, this doesn't make sense. You did this wrong. So there's a whole bunch of strategies I've adopted that make that better.
Yeah.
Versus just giving it one prompt and having it generate a whole bunch of garbage.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you said that because now we're pretty much going back to how we started coding. Everything started in the terminal, and then we went into like fancy IDs, like making our life easier. Now we're going back to the terminal. Yeah, I think what I'm curious to know about is if this is where we're heading towards. What distinguishes the new self-adapting, algorithms or AI models to the traditional ways of how models, train or retune themselves?
Well, the traditional way, if you think about traditional AI, there is some sort of feedback loop, like a recurrent network where it's getting more information, it's self-correcting itself, but it's very guided guardrails. It's doing one thing only. Like if you look at a fraud detection algorithm, right? Yeah, it's learning based on new patterns it's seeing, but it's suddenly not going to go, okay, well, there's a new technique, completely new technique where people are like, I don't know, doing something new with credit cards to do fraud. I suddenly know how to do that. It still needs that supervised training data and whatever tweaks to its algorithm to be able to do it. When you're talking about this futuristic scenario, which I don't know how far it is, there's a good paper called AI 2027.
Okay.
AI 2027. It's a paper slash really nice interactive diagram. That one, the AI does figure out how to fix itself.
Okay.
And fix itself to the extreme where it can make itself better, and it starts to head towards AGI and then eventually ASI, which is artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence. So at that point, yeah, it's coding itself, and you're really not doing much or anything at all, which is a weird scenario.
Yeah.
Will we get there by 2027? I don't know.
Yeah. But there's a potential for it.
There are more qualified people than I am that some of them think we will, and some of them think we won't. The reality is we need to think about what will happen whether it happens tomorrow or 10 years from now, because I think you were saying it before this conversation, it will happen. And I do agree with that. It might take 50 years to happen, and we'd be way past our careers, and there'd be a whole new generation of engineers that are developing in a different way, that are not going to be faced with everyone's coding. And no, the AI is coding everything. No one does coding anymore. No one does engineering anymore, because we now have forget AGI, which is human equivalent. We now have an ASI that can do everything fast, vast, like the comprehension skills are vastly greater than any human could ever think of. It's cloned itself like a billion times.
Yeah, and it can work like 24/7. Whereas,
24/7. Yeah, exactly.
whereas we need coffee, we need to sleep, we need we have our chores.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So when these algorithms are self-evolving and they have their own protocols to follow to self-evolve, what are some sort of guardrails we set for these algorithms so that they don't self-evolve in a destructive way? Like we seen like the Terminator movies where like ASI comes and be like, oh yeah, we need to wipe out all the humans to save Earth, or like some kind of conclusion like that.
Yeah.
How do we set those guardrails, make sure that self-evolving AI doesn't reach that conclusion?
It's a billion-dollar question. It's something I'm actually very interested in the past 6 months or so, because the more I'm using AI development, the more I'm understanding it. I think we all went through phases. We saw ChatGPT come out. We're like, ChatGPT is great. It does a whole bunch of stuff, but it's still kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Right? And then GPT 3.5 came out, and then 4, and then Gemini came out, and Palm came out first, and then Gemini came out. Claude. They all went from being kind of stupid to, to be honest, I know a lot of people think they're not reasoning, and even I used to think that, but if you look at it from a functional standpoint, they are reasoning. Whether or not internally what they're doing something very different than what biological humans do, they are ultimately doing some level of reasoning, and they're giving you an answer that is more or less correct to guide you into your solution. So if the big problem there is, from everything that I've understood, I could be wrong, it's very hard to understand what is happening internally on a language model. And when we're talking about AGI, DSI, we're not just talking about a language model. We're talking about something language model plus. Yeah. There's a whole research that says perhaps language models aren't going to get us to AGI. And there's other people that say they might. I don't know. They know better than I do. But whether or not AGI, ESI are happening tomorrow, your question about guardrails is correct, where we don't know right now. That's a problem in AI alignment, where you don't fully understand something. So how are you going to explain to it? No, don't do that.
Yeah.
It cannot be, in my opinion, something as simple as a prompt that says, remember, don't do anything bad.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
Right? It goes to that conversation goes to something so philosophical, which is, what is bad? There are some things empirically bad, which is don't kill a human. But then what is subjectively bad, right? What could be bad for you is different from me. And if you look at humans, some people drink, some people don't. Everyone kind of knows it's bad, but it's totally fine. Some people sit all day on TikTok and some people don't. That's kind of bad, but that's accepted in society. So what do you define as bad? And how do you make sure the AI doesn't do bad things or harmful things and is aligned with the same goals that humans have?
Well, that's actually a really good point, because I recently read in one of the papers I was reading that they were pretty much saying that an AI model is basically a mirror version of the developer, because it's that person's biasness, his opinions is what is baked into the AI. So yeah, when you say what is good, what is bad, it's just subjective to that person rather than like the collective thought of what is good and bad.
That opens up a very interesting thought, which is if you have personalization, say you have an AI, let's say in 2 years, we now have AIs that are self-learning based on your behavior. They're not self-learning, like they're just personalizing to you. Then what they're doing is they're mirroring you, then they're mirroring the best parts of you, but they're also mirroring the worst parts of you. And if they are completely aligned to you, then they're going to go along with every crazy idea you have and they're going to amplify that idea.
Yeah.
Now you have, going back to what we just talked about, there are some good things that everyone agrees on and some bad things. But if everyone has this AI that is, not AGI, but even now these language models are so powerful, then it will just keep amplifying the good and amplifying the bad.
Yeah.
So when it comes to programming, sure, even right now you could see that it's the developer, the whole vibe coding. It's interesting because cool. On one hand, vibe coding to me is it's opened up this entire realm of people that always had an idea that they wanted to get out, but just didn't understand how to do it, didn't have the resources, and now they can code it. Is the software they're making fundamentally, secure, safe? Probably not. But that's not because they're stupid. That's because the AI is a reflection of them. And if I say, please implement a login, the AI can go ahead and implement a login. Perhaps the hashing algorithm that the AI ends up using this time around is something like MD5 with no salt. So MD5 is already bad. Without a salt is even worse. And so now you have an insecure algorithm. To the vibe coder, they're like, oh, great, it's encrypted, it's a weird string. Yeah, that's fine. So that's a very specific example. But if you keep amplifying those mistakes, the application fundamentally insecure. However, is the output of the application solving a problem? Great. So I think vibe coding does have a great space in the thing. But to your point, it is mirroring the person. So if we move away from developments and start going into different things in society, then they start amplifying it, the good and the bad.
Yeah, that's yeah. So one thing that I could add on to that is when you mentioned that wipe coding or even AI, enhancing itself or amplifying itself over time. 5 years ago, when I was still an undergrad student, we emphasized in explainable AI.
Yes.
So every code that you write has to be transparent, has to be explainable. But today with wipe coding, like you mentioned, that whole concept is off the block now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, it is hard to even explain what is happening in language models. Anthropic, I think, is leading the way in terms of educating the public on, they post these videos, they write papers on trying to uncover tracing and how the language model is working. There was a recent video about 2 months ago or a month ago where, the common notion is it's doing, next token prediction, which technically it is still, but internally it's almost planning what that next token is, because I think they have a poem and it understands 2-3 words or tokens ago what the last token should be to make it rhyme. And so that's something that inherently is not, they didn't trade it on it. There's no code in Anthropic's code base that's if the user wants a poem, then do this, nor have they had a whole bunch of people when they do human reinforced learning say, the thumbs up, this makes sense for a rhyme, this does it. It's something that has emerged from this behavior. And so, these emerging properties are very cool, but at the same time can be harmful.
No, that's a really valid point. No, yeah, going back to your first point where you said you let the AI do its coding and you go have a matcha or a coffee, and then you come back and you see you pretty much do a QA where you test the
Exactly. And I think I am able to do this because I've been working in software now since 2009, 2008, right? So since 2008, or even way before when I was high school, but professionally since 2010. So since 2010 till whatever 2025, I've been working in engineering. So I've written a whole bunch of code. I've worked with talented engineers who criticize my pull requests, and I've learned more or less what is a good practice, what is bad practices. And so I have an intuition for it. So when I see Claude or Gemini going off the rails, and I can catch that quickly, and I revert that pull request and all of that. And then even when I ask it to do something, it's not as simple as, please implement me an API. It is almost like I was writing in Jira tickets where I'm saying, okay, I want you to implement an API. 1, this API should be namespace to API/v1. 2, have a middleware that checks for auth, and then put a stub function in for auth. We're going to get to that later. So we're not vibe coding, we're actually architecting a ticket, and it's very singular ticket, which is we're only dealing with authentication right now. You paste that in, we see what it does, and then you go back and then you say, okay, great, now that stub function, let's expand on that. So when it does that, I can go get coffee, come back, because technically I would be writing the code, but instead it's writing the code based on my detailed specification. So that to me is a lot better than someone saying, please build me a middleware for us, and I'm going to get coffee, and not really understanding what it produces.
So it's more about like the prompts you write, like how detailed and how specific the prompt you write is how the algorithm develops the.
Absolutely. And it, as much as how stupid it sounds, because you're writing something in language, in English language, which is, or language in general, which is very vague, not like I'm not writing a math theorem, but you try to be as specific as possible. And then when you are going from, like, say, back end to front end, a lot of times what I do, I mean, almost all the time, is I'll tell the back end Claude terminal, I'll say, please write a detailed API specification for the user's route, right? Write it as you were talking to a front-end developer, include request, response, and I detail it out, and it prints out a spec. It writes it to a file. I copy that spec as I paste it into another terminal, and I say, this is the spec for front-end, this is the spec for my back-end APIs. As a front-end developer,
Implement this spec. Oh, that's fantastic, yeah. Because so it's the keys and the specificity.
yes.
Okay.
Which goes back to, how can you be specific if you don't really know?
Exactly.
It's like me, I can fix a car, as in I can change a tire, because I learned how to do it in shop class. But like, if the engine is busted, I have no idea. A mechanic can fix that, no problem. So, the vibe coding is me changing a tire and like filling in the cooling and stuff, hoping the car just continues to work. So if you're kind of using these AI tools as a vibe coder or as somebody that doesn't fully understand engineering, you didn't have a bad time. If you're a vibe coder, the best thing you can do there is try to understand what's happening by seeing what it produces, and then perhaps asking another instance of Claude or another AI agent, is this code correct? What are some security implications with this? So that way you're learning as well. I think before we get to AGI and ASI, the best way to utilize these tools is to have that underlying education, formal or informal education, on how do you correctly build a software app, how you correctly engineer something. Forget scale and stuff, because they actually learn with experience a lot of time, but basic 101, not like what is a variable, but like, how do you implement an API? What does a database need, right? It's not, and what is an index on a database, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's a good, really good points there. And yeah, no. So now, if I have to like boil it all down to a picture of where we are right now, can I say that right now you play a role of an experienced software engineer who has been in the field for so many years, and you also play the role of QA as well as a project manager.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right? Exactly. I am the orchestrator, the maestro of all these little agents. The word maestro comes from what my friend recently said, but that's what I'm doing. I'm coordinating them to do something, and I'm basically, writing Jira tickets for some of that and getting them to do stuff.
And making sure that they are in the right direction.
Exactly. Gotcha. It's very detail oriented. It's not so much, wow, look at, like, I'm like sitting back and it's just doing all the work, and I'm like, great client, or like, yeah, I'm pushing this in production. That would be the worst. It's essentially like every 10 minutes or 5 minutes, whenever Claude Code or Gemini does something, you review it, you test it. The best thing to come out from this is I'm actually writing more unit tests.
Yeah.
So I write the unit tests. Sometimes I'll just write those unit tests manually, and I'll say, here's some unit tests, here's my implementation. Let's make sure it passes me stuff. But a lot of times I'll just get it to write the unit tests as well, and I'll review those unit tests first. And then I'll say, okay, it's time to implement this. So kind of do test-driven develop.
Okay. And yeah, I was actually watching a video the other day where the person who wipe coded had zero software background, and they wiped for it and they deployed the app and day one it got hacked.
Yeah. And a lot of people are making fun of the bytecoder, and I think that is the wrong way of doing it because they're genuinely curious and they're solving problems here. I think the right way is if you are building some tool to help vibe code is to build in like security mechanisms and guardrails so that a vibe coder doesn't shoot his foot and shoot their foot and start deploying insecure software.
Yeah. So now this is the role that we are playing right now with advancements in AI. So just say let's put it like 10 years down the road, where self evolving algorithm has reached a point of they're able to let's say ASI, that they're able to clone themselves, reproduce themselves, write code, like improve their performance, everything. Where do we as software engineers, where do we fit in that picture?
I'll start gardening. Right? That's what I'll do. Okay. I don't know. Okay. It's something that I thought about a lot because, yes, in this interesting scenario where you now have a super intelligence that is just writing everything, you actually don't have work. There are some fields, obviously, that have work. Let's look at super intelligence. We'll just talk about AGI. There are some, obviously, a whole bunch of fields still at work. You're still obeying the laws of physics, where with AGI, it is as good as a human. So perhaps we haven't really solved the problem of robotics. So like, doctors aren't suddenly replaced where you have like a robot walk in like Star Wars and do everything, right? But I think our profession will fundamentally change. It will shrink dramatically. I know a lot of people are like, well, you still need people to prompt, but like if it is AGI and it is learning on its own, it's doing its own job. So my question to you then is whoever gets the AGI first kind of becomes almost like running the game in God mode, where they're like, great, we can do whatever we want. And so the question really shouldn't be what happens to the software engineers. It's how do you ensure that when AGI is achieved, it is achieved in the most meaningful way for society. And it's not achieved because technically I think we're going to be out of work. That's guaranteed to happen if we have this thing that is able to just constantly write code all the time. Will we get there in 2027? I don't think so. Will we get there in 2035? Perhaps. 2050? Maybe. Like, I think if I have to put a ceiling for my estimate, 2100, guaranteed. Nope. Right. But before that, maybe. I actually don't have an answer. It is funny to say we'll be out of work, but I think I can't see, for example, a company go, hey, we now have an AGI, and let's say Google achieves AGI. Google can then go, okay, we have an AGI that is as good as a human. Take our top engineer at Google, our AGI is as good as that person. So now we don't need that engineer anymore because I can just get Gemini AGI to fix all the bugs for search. I can get Gemini for all the bugs for maps. So you do have someone that is a non-engineer, perhaps commanding someone to do it. But yeah, you have a severe workforce reduction. You also, if Google decides, you know what, now we can give this as an API to other engineers, other companies, that API is $100,000 a year. No problem. Most companies will probably go, okay, $100,000, I can get rid of $1 million in my payroll. Fantastic. Like, fantastic, right? Google can probably charge $1 million a year and say Google achieves it first, and Microsoft with OpenAI or whatever they're working on, say they realize that, wow, we're actually still 2 years behind. However they make that estimate, they will likely just go pay $1 million a year to Google and help improve their own AGI. Then they have their own there. So who do you want AGI? Which company do you want? Who wins, right?
There.
I have my opinions on what we should do, but I think that is a whole different conversation.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I mean, like what I can, like at least from from a software engineer who got in the field like 5 years ago. My thought or like my perspective is that if an AI is going to replace me, I'm going to build a clone of myself so that a clone of myself will start doing my coding task or whatever.
Yeah.
And then,
There is a chicken and egg problem. It's okay, fine. Everyone starts losing work. There's this dystopian argument of, okay, great. Everyone starts losing work, right? We now have an AGI or ASI that is so good that the robot, it's figured out the robotic solution. It's figured out how to do everything. It's solved cancer. Great. What are people going to do? Inherently human from the dawn of time work.
yeah,
What are we going to do? Where are we going to get the money? How are we going to pay rent?
yeah,
Right? Like all of society will fundamentally change. Okay, let's say they go, okay, well, Faisal, you don't have work, neither does everyone on earth. You don't have to pay rent. Well, then what about my landlord who owns the place? He's going to be like, what the hell? I still need to get paid, right? AI didn't replace me. So who's going to have? Just 5 people that like control AI? That doesn't make sense. So the thing I'll say to anyone that's really anxious about this is whether or not it happens is outside of your control.
yeah,
I think what's in your control is you continue to be a great software engineer. You continue to upskill, learn, and and continue doing your day-to-day, whatever your ambitions are, just follow them. What happens, happens. No one has any control over it. Even if I were to say, you know what, AGI is happening in 5 years, well, what am I going to do in 5 years? I still have to work. Yeah, I still have to do cool stuff that I do. So you're going to have to do that stuff anyways. It's beyond our control at this point. And it's not like you're gonna, I'm gonna go join DeepMind, let's say, and be able to like convince them don't do AGI because it's not good for society. I think it's absolutely good for society. Well, it will improve quality of life if it's done in the right way.
indeed, yeah. And when I bring the same topic to like not just software engineers, right, to other people like in the creative field or wherever they are, when I bring this topic of AI replacing because it's doing drawings better than us, VO3 is making movies, like fantastic movies, and when I bring the same topic to them, everyone comes to the same conclusion of, do we end up like the movie Wall-E, where we're like just fat people sitting on a bed watching some random show and just eating?
You know, it's funny. I'm so biased against the arts because I love movies. I think that is one profession where, yes, it will be very heavily augmented by Leo and all these cool models. I just can't see humans going, great, I am now happy with an AI generating art or a movie that took 5 minutes to generate. Let's say we get that good, right? Where it takes 5 minutes and Leo can generate a 2-hour long video that is like very coherent and is as good in terms of technical cinematography and stuff as say Christopher Nolan's movies. I don't think a human will be like, great, I can't wait to watch that. And because there's something inherently human about someone struggling, I mean, that industry will exist. Why? Because there are garbage movies that Netflix is pumping out nonstop that people still watch, right? So there's a market for that. So the market definitely will shrink. However, there's still a market for Dune 2 and Oppenheimer and all these movies that have massive billion-dollar openings. That's not because people are like, oh, I just like trash, I consume trash. People inherently understand taste and they want to watch something that's good. And so if you produce something AI related, I think, and I could be totally wrong, but I think just the understanding that this was entirely, these actors don't exist, this music doesn't exist, it wasn't built by a composer, that's a thing. I don't think it will gain mainstream popularity and movies and art will still be around.
Gotcha. Yeah. That. So, yeah, I think that's really. Yeah. So.
All this is philosophical.
Yeah.
We are in a weird, actually two things that happen. One, this entire future comes to realization where yes, we do achieve AGI, ASI, all that stuff. Or we are going to watch this video 10 years from now going, wow, we were kind of stupid because everything plateaued. And this happens all the time. I got into AI technically, officially in 2015. And so in 2015, I was working at a company and we were building ChatGPT. And I like to say ChatGPT before ChatGPT.
Yeah.
We were building this enterprise AI chatbot, which was companies to chat with it and say, set up a meeting with Sanjay next week. and it can go set up a meeting and stuff.
Okay.
And the hype around chatbots was so huge that you thought literally that in the next year, all apps are dead and it's all going to be a chat interface. Saw that. I saw that rise. I saw that crash. And then ChatGPT comes out and you thought the same thing. You literally thought, great, now chat is so good that why do you need a UI interface? But we're still using UI interfaces. We have changed. I am writing code with a more of a chat interface, guaranteed. However, I don't see Facebook, Netflix, all these things are suddenly, forget Netflix, but like Facebook, news article sites and stuff. They're not this chat-based interface. I'm not just sitting on WhatsApp going, tell me the latest news. Great, thanks. Tell me this, thanks. So we, in technology, I find we tend to think about the most optimal, where everything works out perfectly, there's no challenges, and humans all follow one trajectory, and we all just do everything that the technology expects it. Think about smartwatches, VR, what we're talking about. So the second angle of this is none of this materializes, but not in the most extreme senses that we're thinking about. We have something that is very powerful. It's perhaps not AGI, but it's very powerful, that is able to solve a lot of problems. DeepMind is able to cure cancer, but DeepMind's algorithm that cures cancer is not the same algorithm. Can't be generalized into curing, let's say, an Alzheimer's or something, right? So we're still working on these problems here, and it's going to take more time because we haven't cracked the code on what is the right algorithm. So these things can happen tomorrow. It can happen 10 years from now.
Yeah. So like the takeaway of our whole conversation is that we don't stop there. I mean, don't sit and think about what's going to be 10 years from now, what's going to be 5 years from now. What just do what you can now. Just focus on your building yourself, building your career, whatever it may look like, wherever you are. Just focus on yourself and have positive thoughts. And when it happens, right?
In Stoicism, there's this thing about you can't worry the things that's out of your control.
Yeah.
There's no point. Just like in, when you're studying for a test, you can sit there and worry the whole time about what happens if I fail this test. Right? Or you can think about what happens if I do amazing at this test. And you can be like, my parents will be proud of me. I'll get to Harvard, blah, blah, blah. Or you think about what happens if I fail this test. Both of those realities, you can sit there thinking about them the whole day and they're going to achieve nothing. The only thing that matters is you study and you execute. So if you're getting started in a career or you're late stage in your career or wherever you are, what matters is execution. Continue executing, continue learning, starting that business, getting a job, promotion, whatever you want to do, continue your life. What happens.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
We're all going to be in the same boat and we'll figure it out. We have this tendency to figure things out.
Yeah.
We've made it this far.
Yeah.
We made it this far.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think I'm definitely more optimistic now after this whole conversation that we have. And I'm pretty sure like our audience would be as optimistic as I am as well. Thank you.